Hello and welcome to this edition of the Link Changemakers series. I'm Michael Aiken, president of Link Strategic Partners. I am super excited about today's discussion. I'm excited about all of our discussions, but today is really special. We've got just a phenomenal group of individuals from Manchester, England, where we have Link's first international branch. We set up an operation in Link a few years back in Manchester, and we looked everywhere around the UK to decide where we were going to put our first international branch. We looked at London like one does. We looked everywhere, and we fell in love with Manchester. It's an incredible city filled with incredible people. There was a spirit, an authenticity, a grittiness there that we wanted to be a part of. And today, I think you'll hear a little bit more about that. So instead of me leading this one today, our two full-time folks over in Manchester are going to lead this one. Matt Helfrich, our UK branch manager, who really helped establish our presence there, and Poppy Humphrey, who has done a phenomenal job as Link's Director of Standards and Accountability, who is from the mighty Manchester. And so I will turn it over to both of them with gratitude and to our incredible panelists.
I'm so proud to have called Manchester my home for the last quarter of a century. And over the past 25 years, my career has spanned social housing, higher education, and local politics. Throughout this time, I've been amazed to see how much our city has evolved. But one thing has remained an absolute constant, and that's the strength of the community here. And the work that we do today, it spans regions and the national landscape, but it also transcends global borders. Today's panel, Made in Manchester, highlights the incredible impact of collaboration and community leadership in our dynamic and amazing city. Manchester has long been a hub of innovation, resilience, and social change. And today we're going to explore how local change makers are building partnerships, driving economic renewal, and really shaping our city's future. I'm so honoured, alongside Matt, to facilitate today's discussion. We're so excited to introduce our incredible panellists, leaders and visionaries who are making a lasting impact right here in Manchester and far beyond our brilliant city. So as we say in the mighty Manchester, let's crack on.
Thanks, Poppy. I couldn't be more excited about the incredible leaders we have with us today, all gathered right here in Manchester. Each of them brings unique experiences and insights into how collaboration and convening can shape our future. We're in for an inspiring conversation, so let's get started. It's my pleasure to welcome Emily Harrison, CEO of Oliver Cookson Foundation, James Gregory, CEO of Families Against Violence, Gav Evans, Chair of Trustees at Norbrook Youth Club, and James Grimes, Director at Chapter 1. Thank you so much for each of you for joining us today. Now, I'd like each of you to introduce yourselves and share a little bit more about the roles you play in your organizations. Over the next hour, we're going to unpack the work you lead and what has inspired you to convene within your communities, specifically talking about what drives you to bring people together and how does convening play a role in the impact you create. James Gregory, can you please kick us off?
From losing my son, I wanted to give him memory and also the impact it had on myself. I started the project in Moss Side, an area where deprivation and a lot of ethnic minority lived. I come from a Caribbean background, and as growing up, even before I lost my son, I could see, the deprivation of gangs, drugs, and things which change communities. I never realised that that impact would further me down the line. But from, as I said, losing my son, I've been able to build something for the community and empower young men and fathers to look at how we can support each other and build self-respect. And that was one of the things which really I wanted to bring together from this conversation about how self-respect of identity and self-worth can be given back to the youth in the community. So the work itself has really grown into supporting parents who have not just lost a child, just feel that they've found something that they can belong to. Manchester has a culture of history in terms of the people that I've been able to work with, from backgrounds from Bangladesh to Libya to Morocco to Chinese to so diverse communities. That's what makes Manchester for me very special. But that's my introduction into some of the work that I do.
Thank you so much, James. Next up, we'd love to hear from Gav Evans.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Gav Evans. I'm a Mancunian through and through, and I'm currently the chair of a youth centre, a youth club called Norbert Youth Club, and I've been involved for about 15 years now as a volunteer. But it was Norbert Youth Club was a space I went to as an 8-year-old. When I became 8 years old, I'd realised all the lads on my estate, all the boys on my estate, were going to this youth centre where they did football and pool and table tennis, and I wanted to participate in these activities like the rest of the children who live near me. And it was when I attended this youth club as a youngster that I realised the impact in my life in terms of meeting friends, participating in sport and leisure, going on residentials, participating in competitions. I realised how important that was to me years later, and it wasn't until I was working for Manchester City Council, the local authority, that I realised my old youth club was in a state of disrepair and it was falling apart, and that was 22 years later. So I decided to get involved, and I didn't realise how much the involvement would mean, but I've stayed involved and I've helped secure various pots of funding to rebuild the youth centre, bring in new volunteers, and I think it still had a big impact on my life, just in terms of wanting to help youngsters off my estate, like me as an 8-year-old, come and change their lives. So that's everything about me.
Thank you for sharing, Gav. Next up, Emily Harrison.
Hi, I'm Emily Harrison. I'm the CEO of the Oliver Cookson Foundation. I'm an honorary Mancunian. I hope by now. I've been here 15 years, and I remember moving here and just being so excited to live in this incredible city that was this kind of collaboration between creativity, industry, social justice, fun. It is an amazing city, and I'm really proud to work here. Our founder of the Oliver Cookson Foundation was also a Mancunian, is also a Mancunian, and he started his business here about 20 years ago, created the My Protein brand, and decided to set up his own foundation a few years ago when he'd sold that company on. So he tasked me with setting it up, creating the charity side of things, and our mission is around free first aid for all. So we've gone out into communities and trained just over 16,000 people now in first aid for free in the last 2 years. And we've also rolled out a business side where we offer accredited training on a non-profit basis. So anyone who chooses us for their first aid qualifications, that money goes straight back into the communities in which we operate. So yeah, we were always going to be based in Manchester, given that's where my team's based and that's where our founder's from. But it really is an amazing place to be based and to launch as well, because we started out kind of knocking on doors of people, can we come and train you in first aid? And people opened the door and said, yes, let's do it. And then 2 years later, we're looking down on 20,000 people trained, and that's all people giving their time voluntarily to learn how to save a life. And that's very much the Mancunian spirit to me, is that everyone wants to help out each other out. So yeah, it's been an amazing place to start this organisation.
I love that. Thank you, Emily. And last but certainly not least, Mr. James Grimes.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me on. My name's James. You might be able to tell from my accent that I'm also not made in Manchester. I'm from Norfolk, which is the other side of the country, but I've been in Manchester for 8 years now, and I can say that my recovery was made in Manchester. And when I say recovery, that's from a 12-year gambling addiction, which started as a young person and took me to a pretty awful place and caused lots of devastating harms. And it was only, moving to Manchester, being around this place and around these people that really triggered recovery for me. And since that moment, every day in Manchester has been a better day than when it was before. And I now lead Chapter 1, which provides information and support for everyone affected by gambling, designed to prevent people experiencing what I did. And that's been created by the charity that is Gambling with Lives, which was set up by families who'd lost loved ones to gambling-related suicide. My involvement with the charity came from just months into recovery from my own gambling addiction, was seeing their stories in the paper and seeing those parents talk about their children, and quite bluntly, that could have been my mum talking about me. And of course, that still is the reason that I'm very passionate about the work that I do and trying to prevent anyone experiencing that.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing your stories. I want to dig a little bit deeper into them. So specifically talking about Manchester, as you all know, whether you're from here or whether you've called this city home for years, Manchester, it's long been hailed as a city with a very strong industrial legacy. It has the history of igniting the Industrial Revolution. It's championed the suffragette movement. And the city really, I think, embodies resilience, reinvention, and an unwavering spirit of really doing things differently. So I know that each of you has touched on this slightly in your intros, but I'd love for you to dig deeper and tell us any more reasons that really makes Manchester special to you, and how does the city's unique identity shape the work that you do? Okay, so Gav, let's start with you then. So you've been a part of Norbrook Youth Club since you were a child. What makes Manchester's communities really powerful, and why do you keep investing in them?
It's probably because I see a lot of youngsters and a lot of families just like me. So everyone around me is, has come through probably a lot of hardship and struggles, and I'm probably from a lot of loving families as well. But the area we've grown up in, Wythenshawe, there was people didn't have a great deal, and that wasn't just Wythenshawe; it was probably even wider. So for me, I think it kind of, when you see how each of these families and neighbourhoods all support one another as well, it's really, really important. And it makes me grateful from being from this area, because it's made me who I am today in terms of, how I want to help others. So I guess that's why it's important for me, is that every time I see someone who's doing something great, or someone who needs a bit of support from where I'm living, it's made me kind of feel like the work that I do, and certainly supporting the youngsters that I'm working with, as being sort of detrimental, really, to creating good role models and good young people for the future. So having a place where they belong, a place where they can say, I'm proud of my roots, rather than saying anything about they don't deserve a chance for where they come from. So that's the sort of essence of Manchester for me, really, is, work hard and you'll get what you deserve.
Thank you, Gav. Thank you for sharing. Emily, over to you. Your foundation is equipping thousands with life-saving skills. How does the city spirit of innovation drive your work?
I think when we started Cooks and First Aid, which is kind of the first project we've done with the foundation, Oliver, who is, again, a Mancunian, very innovative, very successful businessman, and I kind of took inspiration from the way he approached his business thing. It's like, what can we do to get people to learn to save a life? So we need to make it as simple as possible. We need to deliver that training in communities. It's got to be free. It's got to be quick. When you think of first aid, you think, I'm going to be there all day. I'm going to be sat around filling in forms and all that. And people just don't have time for that. And so we were like, right, I went on a couple of courses and I was like, okay, these are all great. I've learned the skills, but I have been here all day. So I said, right, we're going to do a 1 hour course. We're going to teach people the essentials of how to save a life in 1 hour. We're going to go into communities and deliver it in leisure centres and libraries and park cafes, places people are already going, so they're not going out of their way. We want to make sure all our buildings that we use are accessible, that they are, there's parking nearby, or a bus route or a tram. And keeping it as simple as possible was like our innovation, really, because, again, some of the things that I found, they were just overly complicated, and there was booking forms, there was a cost. So we stripped it right back. And we went out into communities and said, can you help us become lifesavers, and they said yes. And we've worked with loads of schools and loads of community groups, cultural groups, charities, all kinds of people who've welcomed us. And I think what I've seen in the last 2 years, because we've had a front row into every possible kind of community group you can imagine, from refugee gardening clubs, elderly groups, schools, the brownies, everyone you can think of. And it is a community of communities, I think, Manchester. There's so many different kinds of people here and different cultures and languages, and it's amazing because everyone does support each other and people are really proud to be Mancunian. And I think that is really special. And I know there's communities all over the UK, but I don't think what we've tried to do here would have worked as well in other places, because it is a major city, but it's got a nice kind of small town feeling. Like on this panel alone, I used to be a trustee for James's charity. I used to work with Gav at the Manchester City Council. And without even knowing we're all going to be on the panel, we've got these connections between just like these 4 people. So that amplifies massively across the whole city. And people do, want to help each other out, which is not necessarily innovative, but it's certainly the very kind of the thing that makes Manchester special.
Thank you, Emily. And I think you're speaking to why we, again, wanted to put our branch here versus anywhere else across the UK. Going to you next, James Gregory. I wanted to say James G, and you're both James Gs. So James Gregory, you're leading efforts to combat violence and build stronger communities. How has Manchester's culture and history really impacted your work?
My work has been influenced by the background of my heritage. We come from African Caribbean heritage. I think my work reflects my community in which I'm part of. Here in Manchester, we come from a diverse city where many different cultures and faiths exist. And through the work that I do, which is driven by the community for the community, it gives them a voice, it gives them a safe space to come to, and also just to be a part of the culture. I believe that's what makes Manchester special for me to be a part of the work we do inside the inner cities of Manchester.
All right, James Grimes, your work focuses on education and prevention. How does Manchester's legacy of firsts inspire the work that you do today?
Well, it starts from a point of local need. I think 1 in 15 residents in Greater Manchester have experienced gambling harm. So clearly there's a need for the work that we do. But I'm not just saying this because I'm on this panel and I'm from Greater Manchester, but truly, in terms of gambling harm prevention, Greater Manchester have been pioneers. They did something before anybody else did, and that was take a different approach to prevention. For so long, the focus has been on responsible gambling and telling people to gamble responsibly and set limits and stop when the fun stops and blaming them when they can't. What Greater Manchester, in partnership with us at Chapter 1 did, was actually say there's a reason why addiction happens, and that's because we have a gambling industry that has very addictive products that markets itself wherever we look, and we want to have counter messaging to that. And Greater Manchester Combined Authority created this intervention alongside us, and over the last few years we've been building on that spirit of doing things differently, and we continue to do that, and it has worked. I think off the back of it we saw 100% increase in people accessing the local NHS treatment clinic for gambling. So that in itself is, for me, the proudest thing, because we got local people into local help at the right time, and that was because Greater Manchester took the plunge and did something differently, and were pioneers in that sense.
So as Matt said, in Manchester we're known for doing things differently, and we even have the famous slogan that says we do things differently here, and we're a city that isn't afraid to challenge the norm, whether that's industry, activism or community leadership. So we'd really like to hear from our panelists today about how you embrace innovation or unconventional approaches in your work. Emily, I'm going to ask you to kick us off. Your foundation has provided free first aid training on a really large scale. You mentioned before that you've reached over 20,000 people as part of that initiative. Can you tell us a little bit more about your innovative strategies to have such a great impact and reach?
Yeah, and I think we we wanted to reach out to communities and deliver training directly because we knew that we couldn't expect or shouldn't expect people to come to us. A lot of the opportunities to learn first aid are usually through the workplace, or you might learn it at school, but it's only kind of come onto the curriculum since 2020. So it's not embedded in a lot of schools yet in the way that it should be. So we reached out to schools, we reached out to community groups, and we asked them to host our sessions and to offer that to service users that are using their charity or their community group. And that is how we've reached people who might not necessarily access that training anywhere else. Because like I say, it's usually through a workplace. You might be the qualified first aider at work and go on your 1-day course every 3 years. But a lot of people just don't have access to that kind of in-person training. There's loads of great internet resources, but we really believe that actually trying out chest compressions in person is essential for learning how to do first aid, because you don't realize how difficult it is until you try it. And the other thing is around educating people on the locations and how to use defibrillators. Manchester is hopefully going to become the UK's first heart safe city. We did a partnership with British Heart Foundation in Wythenshawe in 2023, and the findings of that report are hopefully going to be rolled out across the UK. Manchester, and again, in the spirit of doing things innovatively and differently, has decided to kind of adopt this guidance so that they're identifying places across the city of Manchester where there are gaps in provision of defibrillators and placing them strategically in places where they maximise the access to them. So in Wythenshawe, we mapped out the whole area and looked at where the gaps were and reduced the return journey time from 14 minutes, which is about 7 minutes too long, to just under 7 minutes. So that's just from thinking about where we put these defibrillators has halved the return journey time, which is the difference between someone surviving a cardiac arrest and not. So we're really excited that Manchester's kind of adopting this approach, and we're at the beginning of the journey with it, but we're working with the local authority, British Heart Foundation and Resource Council to hopefully roll this out so that Manchester will be the UK's first heart safe city, which is super exciting. And again, you know, a city of firsts, which is good.
Absolutely. And, you know, what I'm hearing here is that you've been working with local communities to make sure that they're really giving you the, you know, the intelligence of where these kits should be sited, and that you're doing it on a hyperlocal level, but with your work with the British Heart Foundation, which, for those people that are watching from outside the United Kingdom, is a national charity. You've got the hyperlocal approach, you've got the, you know, the national approach as well. So congratulations on everything that you're achieving, and we're excited to see where the journey takes you. Thanks, Emily. Gav, I'm going to turn it over to you, if that's okay. So Norbrook, it's been a vital community space for years, and you mentioned that you've been involved kind of with your formal hat on for the past 15, but you were there, you know, right from when you were a lad. How do you adapt to the changing times and everything that we're seeing in our city while still preserving the club's legacy throughout this change?
Well, I think the voluntary and community sector and organisations that are here today and all over Manchester are all looking to survive. They're looking to push on to new ways of working, to adapting their organisations as much as possible. And, you know, we're no different. And I think what we tried to do is try to aim for what do we want to do in the next 5 years, but what's the 10-year plan? What's the 25-year plan? So we've seen many organisations, you know, after 2 years, maybe struggling with bits of funding and looking for quite a lot of support, whereas we've tried to be really innovative in what we want to do. And where we need to apply for funding, you know, whether it's building a new games room or whether it's applying for funding for certain pieces of youth provision to run. We try to be really positive in our approach, and we've done it really successfully. I'm really proud of the work that we've done. We've not waited for people to come to us offering support. We've used new ways of working. We've made films with young people. We've used volunteers. We've used, you know, any resources we can get our hands on and to promote how people are supporting us, and people really like that. So I think it's the partnerships, it's the networks, but it's changing to adapt to times, and we don't wait for wait for support to come to us. You know, we're going and we're seeking what we need to do, but always maintaining what we're good at never striving to do too much, but just doing what we're good at, but having some good aspirations to get there.
Love that, Gav. Knowing what you do really well and making sure that you deliver it. Absolutely love that. Thank you. James Grimes, I'm going to turn it over to you. You've spoken about your work at Chapter One. Really, really interested to know about any unexpected approaches or new and novel approaches that you've taken to help connect the work you're doing with audiences.
Yeah, sure. So we're fortunate in Greater Manchester that we have a community of people who have been harmed by gambling that formed a lived experience group called GAM Hive, and the hive is supposed to represent the bee of Greater Manchester. But that group helped us co-design a campaign to try and prevent people experiencing harm and to get people onto the Chapter One website. And that local insight, local knowledge gave us authenticity, credibility, and also actual just real messages that would land with people who are struggling. And at the end, it resulted in over 44,000 people visiting the website in a month period. And we know during that period actually that the second most visited page on the website was how and where to get help. So clearly there was a need again for people to get this kind of information, and that local insight helped us make it relevant, accessible, and actually in a language that people will understand. People need to be, the messaging people receive has to be at a level that people can relate to and understand and actually want to engage with, and that involvement of the lived experience group really helped achieve that.
Thanks, James. Did you say 44,000 people have accessed the website?
That was 44,000 Greater Manchester residents as well, all seeking information and support for gambling harms, which in a way is good and bad. I think good that the website served its job, bad that there's clearly a need locally for people to get that help.
Absolutely. All right, James, thank you very much for that. James Gregory, Families Against Violence takes a really proactive approach to preventing violence on our streets of Manchester with young people. Can you tell us a little bit more about unconventional or outside of the box strategies that have been most effective for you when dealing with youngsters in Manchester and their families and the wider community?
Yes, I think detached youth work, being on the streets, being able to be reactive to things which sometimes happen on the street level. Because I think if you have youth workers who are visible, who are trustworthy, we can build communities from that approach. I think we have to go to where young people are at, which are the streets, and hopefully those relationships you can signpost them to other organizations or into your own activities. But I think working outside the box, I think doing street intelligence and being able to put out fires before things happen, helping the local shop owners in the community, where sometimes you have young people hanging around and taking from the shop. We're able to sometimes support those businesses and identify our young people, give them a good talking to, and that's very cost effective to allow young people to sometimes make mistakes, but also own up to these mistakes so they can learn from them. So I think, that's something out of the box, being youth work led, being on the streets, that really makes a difference.
Manchester is booming, but with rapid growth comes some real challenges that we need to be honest around. How do we ensure that as the city evolves, we don't lose our heart, identity, what makes us different, and our real strength of community spirit? So a question for the panel is, as Manchester grows and develops, how do we ensure that we balance this progress with protecting and sustaining community-driven impact that we're all so passionate about? Gav, I'm going to turn it over to you first. How do we protect and sustain community hubs like Norbrook Youth Club amongst citywide changes?
If I'm honest, I keep it simple and straightforward. Promote what you're doing. Make sure that everybody who's associated with your organisation feels the value from the work that you do. Make sure that you're shouting from the rooftops about the good things that you're doing, so you're getting recognised. I think that can go a long way, really, with volunteers or people associated with an organisation, and even just people participating. If you're a youngster and you're proud about where you're going and what you're doing, and you're likely to tell your friends and cousins and other siblings to come along, then that I think that's half the battle. But I would certainly, as adapting to changes as we discussed before, adapting to new ways of working, new ideas, don't be afraid to try new things. I think it's keeping it positive in that way. But definitely, is play to your strengths, use and promote what you're good at, because there'll be good people that know what you're doing and then might want to step forward, whether that's sending a youngster to come and get involved in an activity, or whether it's actually, I want to donate some funds to what you're doing, or even just reaching out to say we'd love to come and volunteer and do some activities. So yeah, stick to what you're good at. That works.
All right. I love that, Gav. And also I love the fact that you spoke about people seeing Norbrook and other organisations and kind of having a badge of pride, a sense of identity, whether they're going and using the services or whether they're volunteering, however they're involved in it. So thanks very much, Gav. James Grimes, I'm going to turn it over to you. As Manchester evolves, how can we use education and prevention to ensure that this progress benefits all?
Education and prevention is vital, but I would also say that it's good to have growth, it's good to have progress, it's good to have a booming city, but not if it comes at the detriment of the people that live in that city. And having relentless opportunities to gamble, to buy fast food, to vape, to drink, has to be at a level where people are protected from those harms. And of course, education and prevention is really important, but the truth is it's a raindrop in an ocean of normalisation of all those activities. And I don't want Manchester to become a city that has lots of thriving businesses if those thriving businesses are costing people money, time, and sometimes their lives. So our job on the prevention side of things is to continue to do that work on the ground and tell people about the risks of gambling, especially. But actually, politically, we'll continue to make the case that it is better in the long run to have healthier, safer communities and people for lots of reasons, including economic reasons. It's better to have a healthier country, and by promoting something that we know costs people money, mental health, time, all the things I just mentioned, in the long run, that's not good for the city, it's not good for the country, and it's not good for the people that live there. So prevention is a part, education is a part, but there's a much bigger public health approach that we need to have the best possible environments for the cities and the towns that we live in.
James, thanks very much. So healthy, thriving communities, which set against the backdrop and fully entwined actually in responsible growth. Thanks very much, James. Emily, I'm going to kick it over to you. So how can organisations like yours ensure that as Manchester expands, essential life-saving skills and training remain accessible to all?
I mean, we're incredibly fortunate that we are a fully funded charity. Oliver has, sorry, I'll start again. So we're incredibly fortunate that Oliver fully funds all of our activities through his foundation, and we're building Cooks and First Aid into a sustainable non-profit that will eventually cover its own costs and allow it to grow into a national brand. That's our aim. But we also work with a lot of community groups where funding is a huge problem and they're operating on very limited funds, and they spend a lot of their time fundraising or trying to access grants. And having worked in charities for a long time, I've been in that situation myself. So I think ensuring that investment that is coming to Manchester and is in enabling that boom is reinvested into communities all across the city, not just in the city centre where the majority of the development is happening. So I went to an event last week that was talking about the devolution of the Greater Manchester budget from national government, which will allow all of the funding that covers all of Greater Manchester to be allocated directly through the Greater Manchester Combined Authority. And I think that's a really exciting approach, something quite new and innovative. And there's a lot of discussion around how we're going to commission services through the community groups and community networks that already operate in Manchester, so that those organisations who are on the front line delivering this incredible work and effective work are getting sustainable funding, and that for me is key. And I think if we can take that approach where we fund things directly in that hyperlocal community way, we will have that healthy, thriving communities that James was talking about. And I think that is a real opportunity for Manchester to really do things differently. And I think it's a really exciting opportunity, and I'm really excited to see how it develops in the next few years.
Emily, thanks very much. I'll turn it over to James Gregory to close us out. So James, in your work addressing violence prevention, how do we ensure that as Manchester develops and continues to grow, no one is left behind?
Oh, that's a massive question, really. Every child deserves to have full consciousness of themselves. If we can empower each and every child to understand their full consciousness, then each person, woman and child can make the changes that we need for the world.
Manchester's legacy at first. So what's next? So we've always been trailblazers, and we've spoke about many reasons why Manchester is a fantastic city. And that is in part down to the fantastic work that you're all doing here today. We're so proud and pleased to hear from you all. But as changemakers, you're essentially writing the next chapter of Manchester's legacy. So I'd like you to give me just a sentence or two about what's the next big step in your work. And some of you may have already touched on this, but summarise it for me. How do we continue Manchester's legacy of being a city of firsts? James Grimes, take it away.
Well, you mentioned chapter, and obviously that rang a bell because I represent chapter 1, and chapter 1 for us was in Greater Manchester, but chapter 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 will be national. We want to take a regional success story, and we do think it's a success story because we've got evidence that it's helped people and got people into treatment, as I mentioned, and we want to make that an intervention that works everywhere in the country, so other parts of this country can learn from what worked here, and that's our plan. We just launched chapter 1 as an official national provider of gambling harm prevention, so hopefully we can go and serve people across the UK, and who knows, maybe beyond one day, but we'll start with this country.
James, thank you. And reminded me of another saying, you know, what Manchester does here today, the rest of the world does tomorrow. So keep up the great work, James. That's fantastic. Emily, I'll turn it over to you.
So our next step is to roll out Cooks and First Aid nationally. So we're already kind of operating across the northwest of England, and our goal is to be national, have a presence in all major cities across the UK in the next year or so. And the other element of what we're doing is trying to build a digital brand. We're looking to create a resource that can be used by people all across the world to learn essential first aid. Not everyone will always be able to access in-person training, so we want to create those resources and make sure that they're really accessible. So the messages are simple, it's easily translatable into other languages, and it's accessible to people with other kind of additional needs as well. We want to kind of take what we've done in Manchester and spread it across the world. Sorry, let me say that again. We want to take what we've achieved in Manchester and roll that out nationally and create that global message as well.
All right, so it starts in Manchester, but we're going to expect to see this rolling out across the country and beyond. All right, thank you very much, Emily.
So, first of all, thank you all for making time today to join us. I know that you all are so busy helping so many people across our great city. So again, thank you for your time. I would love to close up by just saying Manchester's strength has always been in its people. Hardworking people, innovative, committed to progress. The work each of you are doing today is really shaping the city's future. Thank you for being part of this conversation, and thank you each for the work that you do.